right now. You'll also notice that we are recording. That is so that anyone who's missed this can watch on our virtual library. So if you haven't seen our virtual library page, go to the CMC website, click on Alumni or Parents, virtual programming, and there is a library of all the events that we've done for the last 2 months. Lots of professor talks and alumni talks and even some wine tastings. Encourage you to check those out. And of course, if you have anyone else who might be interested in hearing this talk, please encourage them to go on to the virtual library on the Alumni and Parent section of the website. It should be posted in about a week. My name is Evan Rutter. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Alumni and Parent Engagement at Claremont McKenna, also a proud alumnus of the college. And it's with great pride and pleasure to have Jennifer Sandoval-Dance, our Associate Vice President for Admission and Financial Aid, with us today to talk about the admission landscape, to answer your questions, and to have a great conversation about kind of the future of college admission. A few things about Zoom. You'll notice at the bottom, there's a chat feature and a participant feature. If you click either of those, it'll pop up to the right side of the screen. The chat feature, of course, you'll see a lot of names and cities and states. Put your name in there if you haven't yet. If you want to ask a question, but maybe you either can't unmute or you're not comfortable asking yourself, you can put a question in the chat and when we get to the Q&A portion, I'll ask the question for you. In the participant section, there's a button that says raise hand. If you want to ask the question, if you want the floor to ask Jennifer directly, go ahead and virtually raise your hand and I'll call on you in the appropriate order when we get to the Q&A section as well. Also, the very top right, there's something called speaker view and grid view. So if you are on speaker view, that means right now you see me, and then maybe there's about 5 or so people right above my head. If you go to grid view, that means you could see 20, 30, 40 people here across the screen. So whatever your preference is, I encourage you to do that. I recommend speaker view so that you can see Jennifer while she is engaging, and then of course see who is asking the question when it comes to the question and answer session. This is a bittersweet moment for us because of course, as everyone knows, we released our students over spring break. We have not yet had a commencement ceremony for our class of 2020, even though they did actually graduate. We will have a commencement for them in the near future. But we are welcoming our class of 2024. And so Jennifer and her team spent a lot of the spring and even early summer crafting the class that will be joining CMC in August. And the college is committed to an in-person experience to whatever extent possible in August. And then we are working out those details currently and hoping to announce our plan for a return to CMC in early July. End of June is also the end of our fiscal year. If you have yet to make your end of year gift to CMC, we do encourage you to do that. Participation is very important. I know there's a lot of heartache out there, a lot of issues with the pandemic. Whatever you can do to participate, we would certainly appreciate it, even if it's $20.20 to honor the class of 2020. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Jennifer Sandoval-Dance, who's been with us since 2005. Jennifer joined from USC in 2005 as the Assistant Dean for Multicultural Recruitment at CMC, and now, of course, is the leader of the Admission and Financial Aid offices. Jennifer, turn it over to you.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and I am very excited about this conversation because really, I hope that's more of what it's going to be. I am going to provide general information that'll provide an infrastructure of decisions that we have made as an admission and financial aid office, things that we definitely have at front and center that we will need to wade through as we go through the process. And so I'll share that out. We've had a lot of contact with high school students of all levels, a lot of sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So through a lot of our conversations with them, they've also kept us informed as well as parents. So really, as we all understand, there's a lot of uncertainties and a lot of things to be determined, but the ongoing communication has really helped myself and my staff really frame important questions and get answers out to students so that they can best navigate this process. So I just want to start by taking you all back to mid-March. Mid-March, typically in the admission and financial aid offices, is a time of immense excitement and large crowds. So mid-March is when we'll have anywhere from 100 to sometimes closer to 400 total visitors in a day on campus here in Claremont. So these are students, they're on spring break. We have a lot of high schools will start their college search process with their juniors in January and early February. So many of the admission officers were actually traveling. I know I myself was all over the country doing junior programs with parents and students. So not every high school, not every part of the country or world starts it then, but that's a very natural time for a high school junior to really, they've now seen the seniors go through it. The seniors are starting to get decisions, make decisions, and move on to that next step. And the spotlight, they realize, is now turning to them, their class, as they rise into that role as seniors. So their whole college search process was stopped short. And really, their whole educational and social process was stopped short, right there in mid-March. It might have happened at slightly different times. In some parts of the world, it happened earlier than that. And normally here in the admission office, one of my favorite things about March is that we not only have, or March, April, those months when we have a lot of visitors on campus, is that we have this wonderful fusion of high school seniors that are in the decision-making process. So one minute we're having a conversation with high school seniors about their financial aid package, putting them in contact with very, very much nuts and bolts questions about the CMC experience. They've gotten in, now they're making that final decision. And then an hour later, you can be talking to a high school sophomore or junior who really is in that front step of that process. And so they're asking more about, what is it like to go to school in a suburban? I'm still thinking large research. So they're really in that beginning foray, which I just love that constant switch and that dynamic fusion of seeing those cycles shift right before our eyes. But as we know, in mid-March, when those critical, through April, through May, when a lot of exciting things, a lot of critical conversations, visits that would have been happening in person were stopped short. And suddenly everybody was doing all sorts of things we never imagined we would be doing virtually, right? And so again, as we were continuing to yield our class of 2024, and boy, are we so excited about this class. Do we feel we know them intimately well? We were also starting to go through the challenges of answering questions with that class. So increased questions about gap years, which I know a lot of you have a question about and we'll get to later. We were also starting to field really significant questions from high school juniors. And high school juniors, rising seniors are in many ways the most precarious of spaces right now, right? Their junior year, what everybody tells them is the most important academic foundational year, both in terms of their curriculum, their performance. They're kind of hitting their stride in terms of their engagement, their leadership. They're talking about, should I take the SAT again, or when should I take it? All these things that tend to frame that part of their life, that transition into being a high school senior, really they were in isolation. They were in isolation of their peers. They're in isolation of their teachers. They were forced into a remote learning environment, right? So the academic, the educational, the social, the emotional, the experience, all the things that made their life a regular, routine day, if they had such a thing for a high school junior, just completely stopped short. And we in admission got to see that in a lot of ways front and center, because fortunately, due to a very creative and innovative and hardworking admission staff, we completely took everything and more, but we took everything that we planned on doing on campus and in many ways amplified that and did more. We were able to start offering online information sessions almost immediately from when we went into a remote mode. So our admission officers were starting to get questions right away from high school juniors, even though we had not yet even put together or finalized our class. And so I was getting questions like, Jen, are we going to go test optional? Jen, what about recruited athletes? What about all these things that students aren't going to be able to do? What about if the school is saying they're going to go credit, no credit, right? And it was like, whoa, I was really just trying to focus on the seniors and everything new for them. And now here we have high school juniors that are in many ways at a very critical juncture, right? They're terrified that the fact that their school decided to go credit, no credit could have huge implications on college admission decisions, and just having to think through and come up and really think through everything that we've done in the past, how we've done it in the past, where we are now, and how far can I see in the future to answer as many questions for these students as possible, and also start thinking about all the things that we would need to do. So really for us, I think that a couple of key things to keep in mind. We understand that for high school juniors, their college search process is probably not going to include many, if any, college visits. Now, they may have completed some college visits. They may have a local college or visit that they're able to get out there and see at some point in the near future. But even if they're able to visit a college or university at any time, late summer, early fall, the experience is not going to be like what they would have experienced if they had come, fall 2019, right? They may come and they may get to talk to an admission officer. Maybe there's a tour guide on campus, but the reality is there will still be social distancing probably in place. They will most likely not be permitted to visit classes. Now, they might be able to do that in a remote form by different schools, but let's face it, they're looking at places and colleges and universities as a residential experience. They're looking to come and get all the different aspects. And when you visit a campus, you get it all in one fell swoop. No, you don't have all the answers, but you do have that feeling, that instinct that students get of, I thought I wanted a really big urban place, but this is actually too big and I'm not really quite feeling it. So as much as I thought I wanted Columbia, actually I'm going to take a step back and really think about things a little bit more. Or being in a community and going, I thought I wanted smaller, but this feels a little too small, right? So I need to keep going until I find that Goldilocks, that school that's just about right. So I think for students not to have that opportunity, when our students, prospective students came to visit, many times they could go see a speaker at the Athenaeum, they could attend a Model United Nations meeting. There's all kinds of things that they could participate in at will that was here in our community and really get to see it live in action. Well, we certainly hope that we are live and in action in the fall. It's going to look and feel different for everybody. And we understand this too for high school students. We've been talking to high school counselors and they've made it clear that in whatever capacity they come back in the fall, they're not going to probably have theater, athletic practices. They're not sure what's going to persist in terms of club meetings. So there's going to be modalities that'll continue to probably be operating somewhat in an online format, right? So while not every student visits every school they apply to, and visiting colleges isn't something that every single student does, I do think that even if it's just, again, the local school, their experience of being able to be on a college campus of any size or stature and be able to experience what that means has really been taken away from them at this stage in the process. We'll see where we're at in the spring and once they apply, but we're very aware of that fact. So all colleges and universities are working very hard to put in place, similar to what we've done. We might have been one of the first ones to get this out in all honesty, but online information sessions. There are virtual college fairs that your school, your district, that may be coordinated regionally, online campus tours. So all colleges and universities are trying to bring the facets of who we are. A lot of us are able to include students in ways that we may not have in the past. So we've really tried to lift everything, again, barring the visiting class and actually having students on campus, but doing the online information sessions, being responsive to students and parents and counselors as they call and pose great questions. And also we've started to interview students virtually. And we anticipate, I feel like I can make this call, we're not gonna be interviewing on person. I think it's just best at this point to continue the momentum of doing interviews via Zoom. We're able to reach a lot more people, and I think it just makes it fair so that nobody feels like, let's say we are able to open the admission office for visitors, because keep in mind, even when the campus opens, our admission office, CMC needs to have a full protocol for visitors, and that'll be kind of a step later than getting the students here situated. So I don't want students to feel like, wow, I couldn't get there, but I know my neighbor was able to get there and interview in November in person. Does that mean more? We'll take that out of the equation for them and make sure we keep that part consistent. But we are working to make sure. So for high school juniors, I think they really just need to continue to work with their high school counselors. They have lots of information. We're getting invited to do virtual visits now. We've all done some of them. We're doing summer programs in the way that we normally would in person across the the country and world. So we do have an information session that's set for international families every Thursday at, I believe it's 5 in the morning. So we're really trying to make sure we're reaching all students in many ways, in more ways than we were able to do just being here brick and mortar and having a capacity for students to come and visit. So testing, probably the next thing that I want to get to. You likely, if you have a high school junior, you likely have heard that many colleges and universities have gone test optional. That movement was in place well before the pandemic. Many schools were going, it was conversations that many schools were having about it and a variety of different levels, but this really forced the issue. And for us at CMC, it was an easier, I'll be honest, it was an easier decision for me to make this year than it would have made the year before. And just in terms, I mean, our feet were put to the fire and there was no way we could expect that students were going to be able to get out and safely take this exam. So we knew that that was not going to be something that was an option. But my level of comfort with it was greatly enhanced because this year our admission office employed something called the committee-based evaluation process. So with holistic admission, normally an admission officer gets a file. Let's say your territory is Texas, you read all the Texas files. You would read it, there'd be a second reader, not necessarily a consistent second reader, and that would push it into committee. This is team-based reading. So we would have, Yaneli happens to be the Texas admission officer, so she would read the file, she knows the school, she'd put together the academic metrics for that, and then I might be her partner and I would review the personal metrics of that. And then we would both come together and have a conversation and make a decision. My experience when I was the academic reviewer was scores were an afterthought because they were not part of, we would dive right into the transcript, the school profile, recommendations. Scores were not something that I really went back and looked at until the very, very end. And it wasn't, I don't read as many files as I used to, but in my experience, there wasn't a single instance where the scores were really a critical part of my decision-making process. So from my perspective, while it will continue to be something that we will have to work through, I actually see it as an overall positive. And CMC made the decision to eliminate it for this upcoming application cycle. But I'm not going to deny the fact that we're seriously considering its value further down the line. Just at the moment when we had to make the decision, I try not to make decisions that I don't have to that big. I said, let's just stick with this year. Let's get this decision out for these juniors and we can wade through and figure out what the best next step is. But you'll see that a lot of schools have put themselves on 3-year pilots or some of them have eliminated them, period. So the good news is that is going to take a lot of pressure off. Students who took the test or maybe think that they might have an opportunity to take the test, the SAT or the ACT, the next question is, should I take it and should I submit it? What I've been telling students, and again, you might want to, this is an area where depending on when you get your final list of schools narrowed down, you can actually then maybe drill down, talk to your high school counselor and the schools you're thinking about applying to get a more definitive answer. But from CMC's perspective, what I tell students is your job is to put your best foot forward. And when you were at your best. We all have challenges. We all go through things in life, and certainly for every single junior, this will be amplified with the pandemic and Black Lives Matter and a lot of things that are going on right now, these that are stressors, and people are having difficult ways of dealing with this, especially in isolation. When it comes to scores, what I tell students, all my years in admission, students have said, please don't look at my scores or don't take them, don't put too much weight on them because I don't test well, right? This is not the best way to evaluate my potential to contribute to your academic community. And we've always worked very hard to make sure that they didn't have overdue, influence in it. But really, I think if a student feels that when they took them, particularly for high school juniors, if they took them, let's say at the end of their sophomore year, and they just wanted to see how they would do, and they're not very satisfied with those scores, I would say at CMC, don't submit them, because in your opinion, you're feeling like that was taken at a time when you were not ready to submit it. It's not the best reflection. You weren't as prepared. I don't think that's something you need to put in your application file. On the flip side, if you're looking at it going, I was, gosh, I did really great on this, and this is going to only further complement my academic record, then send it. And at places like CMC, you can call our office, you can email, you can find your regional admission officer. For those of you on this call, you can reach out to me and we can talk you through what might be the best avenue as they're moving through it. So we might be able to provide a higher level of service than some other schools, but just know that's where we're at with that. The difference in curriculum, grading, another big area of anxiety. The great thing is that the common application, which most colleges and universities use, but I would imagine any college or university is going to adopt some model of this. They're putting in place questions that will be intuitive for the students and have conditional logic for the students. So on the application process, a student normally gets to disclose if there were any additional circumstances that they want to expand upon. Above that, they're going to put information, the common application is going to have information that's specific to the COVID and the pandemic, so they don't need to use the additional information section. They could to flesh out some things that they want to outline for COVID, because certainly they can have two separate things. They might have had a death in the family, they might have had an illness, there might be something that they want to talk about in that personal information that's actually outside of the pandemic. Counselors will also be provided with a variety of different avenues for them to check on the school profile, which they submit to colleges and universities about disruptions in their curriculum, online learning, if online learning wasn't possible, if the school required that they take it pass, no pass versus grades. So all of that information your school will provide. And understand that while we have not seen anything like this pandemic in the admission process in the world, to be frank, we have seen natural disasters and a significant portion of our applicant pool being impacted by emergency situations and natural disasters. So we are accustomed to being very responsive and adaptive to understanding a student's record in the context of things that happened that were outside of that control, but certainly put pressure on their ability to be able to perform in optimum circumstances. Okay, so, I think for students, as they're thinking about it, if a student considers themselves a bit of a late bloomer, maybe it wasn't until their junior year they were really hitting their stride, and now they think, wow, this happened, I wasn't able to fully see that out. That's a great, you don't necessarily have to use your essay topic for it, but that's a great, I want to provide the colleges I'm applying to this perspective of where I'm at. And these are things that I did to continue to improve my learning environment. Be honest about challenges a student had, like that. We know online education, especially for places that aren't designed for it, I should just say that, because there are some outstanding online education systems out there. But when somebody has to, in a disruptive environment, move to that, it's not going to be ideal for anybody. So we definitely understand that. In terms of for students, again, like there are questions where people are kind of might see some memes about them. College admission officers are dreading reading a bunch of essays about the pandemic and about, what that's going to look like. I've always felt that every essay is unique, and that however, as long as a student is framing it from their own advantage point, and it's not them thinking this is what the college wants me to write about, and so I'm going to make sure I press this home, and then it's a great essay. The disruption to our lives has been so profound. I can't imagine when a student's thinking about college that their whole perspective might feel and be a bit different. If they don't want to write about it, that is absolutely fine. They do not need to address that. But I think if they're thinking about writing about it, writing about everything going on right now in the world, whatever angle they choose to approach that, it really should be deeply personal to them. And something that we learned a lot with our seniors, our incoming class, how thoughtful and positive and reflective they were through this. And we were with them when they were having to not participate in their senior activities, not be able to actually don their cap and gown and be with their friends and take all that experiences that they really are gonna never really fully get back. We were with them, and they were so incredibly positive and forgoing, and it was all about, what the next step is. And I remember one of them even telling me, that if we're just looking about our graduation, about the fact that we're not getting that, boy, are we awful selfish. The world has got a lot more challenges that we have to face, and we feel we're up for those challenges. So I think it's for students really we understand it's been tough, but to take a pause back and say, but this is a unique experience. This is my reflection on it. And those will be, if they want to choose that, that'll be great. So let's see if there's anything else. On the information session, we talked about that, talked about grading policies. We're definitely going to be sensitive. I think something else, you know, as we're reading applications, obviously for years to come, I always say that the semester spring 2020 will forever have an asterisk on every single high school student, whether they were freshman, sophomore, junior, or senior. And none of us will forget it. For those of us who were in admission in September 11th, that you don't ever forget that. You don't forget what that was like to read those applications, to work with students during that period, to now be reading applicants of students who lost their parents or family members through 9/11. You just never forget it. So don't worry, we won't forget it. We won't be reading it in a blind and naive way. Early decision versus regular decision. This is something else that is going to be a bit unique, right? So some students are interested in early decision, and that's fine. You know, the binding form of admission, and so that's never was going to be an option for them. They always wanted their choice, and they'll continue and persist through that. With the students where early decision is something that they really wanted to be able to do, and we understand for a lot of students, their commitment and ability to be able to say, I want to attend the school, will probably rest on their ability to visit that school, right? Or at least have a lot more kind of a sense of interaction with that school. And for some students, it might be, gosh, I'm down to these 2 schools. What am I gonna do? But I visited that one, but I didn't visit that one. How can I possibly commit to that one without knowing that? So I think, you know, for CMC, we do have 2 rounds of early decision. So one is November 1, the second one is January 5th, the same deadline as regular decision. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I think we'll see how things go. Right now we haven't extended deadlines. We'll see how things go. If we feel we need to, we will. Okay, we're just gonna continue to be responsive for folks. And certainly if it's in individual cases, we've always done that. If a student calls and says, can I have some additional time? You know, I'm visiting campus later. We've always made those exceptions for students. But I think I would anticipate that probably we're gonna see a larger early decision 2 cohort than we potentially have in the past. So that's just something to consider and keep in mind. Other things, we also know financial aid and paying for college for students. During September 11th, there was during that whole period, this connection that families felt to be close to one another. So if something like this were ever to happen again, I want to be close enough to be able to drive home. I want to be close enough, you know, and I anticipate those same kinds of emotional connections will be there. So for some families and some students, it might be, you know, just looking a little closer to home. We want them to keep thinking broader than that. So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, no way, do I want to be far from home? But we understand some of that will be in place. And let's see. Yes, and then of course for students, their senior year and thinking about college, their senior year may not have sporting events, may not have social events in the way that they had them before. And so we understand that's going to be, you know, going into coming under a lot of disruption in the middle of their semester, quarter, whatever that was for them. And then, you know, now it's looking into a senior year that may also be wrought with uncertainty. So we understand that. And then also something we might see is pivoting of career choices. Is medicine less attractive now, potentially? Is it more attractive now? Students thinking about things in very different ways, which is one of my favorite things sometimes when we come through something like this, is students really understanding their role in the world in a different way that they may have seen it prior to something like this happening. So gap year, let me talk about that. And then I want to make sure that I wanted to leave a lot of time for conversation and questions. Gap year requests. This is another big concern with high school juniors and their parents. Is there going to be space for me? Because I know a lot of seniors are considering or have already taken gap years and they don't want to go to their first semester of college online and all those concerns. So every school will manage this a bit differently. I haven't talked to a school that has seen a surge in actual gap year requests. There was a surge in questions about gap years, certainly as we were moving through the process. And right now, CMC has received anywhere from 3 to 12 in all my time here gap year requests. Right now we're at 8. So we're a little bit higher than the low end, but we're not at the tipping end yet, right? So that's nothing that we wouldn't be able to manage. I think as we continue to move through this, the goal, and I continue to work with the leadership here is we want space for this next class, right? So whatever we have to do to manage and make sure that we're able to have a full class, have them in the experience, we're going to work very, very hard to make sure we're doing that. And I think every college and university, if I'm honest, most colleges and universities are anxious, right? I mean, we're flying blind still. If a school hasn't announced their academic plan, what's going to happen when you do? And everybody knows what the academic plans of all the schools are. You know, what are students going to do? Are they going to choose to go here or go there and change their mind last second? And then for a lot of schools, you know, our greatest asset is our campus visit. And we're going to be doing a full recruitment cycle without that. So there's a lot of anxiety about, will high school juniors and rising seniors, you know, even apply, because are they just going to kind of, you know, throw in the towel? And so no, in some ways for juniors, you're in the driver's seat in this regard. Stay interested, stay connected, have, you know, faith in this process that there will be plenty of spaces for you as things start to unfold and unwind, and the high school seniors will figure it out. We'll get them educated and through this process, certainly. So let's see. There was a question submitted in advance. Best advice to a parent. And I love working with parents. Anybody who knows me knows it's just my favorite group. Oops. It doesn't know I'm so still, it doesn't know I'm here. So I would say, you know, it's all for a young person at this age, this is one of the biggest decisions that they've made for a lot of them, right? And the accountability that they should have, the independence, the authorship that they should have in this process is critical. It's not to say that we understand you are a big part of this. You know them well, you're gonna be paying for this. And so not just to take you out of the equation at all, but really listening to what they say. And sometimes listening to when they say, what's important to college? Why are you going to college? What are the qualities? And, you know, having them write that down or somehow record that so that they, you know, in 6 months, if they feel differently, you can continue to have conversations about it with them and let them have their free time. College, talking about college nonstop is not healthy for anyone. So letting them have that time and really just, you know, when they say, I don't want a core curriculum, and then they end up coming up with the top school, it's a core curriculum, understand that's going to happen because colleges and universities just have nuances and differences, and no matter how much they want or don't want something, the school they fall in love with may just be all that minus that one thing or plus that one thing they didn't think they wanted. So really just letting them move through the process and take ownership over it. Hopefully it's still exciting. It's a big, big, big step. We love working with students during this phase of the process and the parents. So know that your team here in admission and financial aid are always happy to answer your questions as you move through this process, even if it's not specifically about Claremont McKenna. All right.
Thanks, Jennifer. Jennifer, we have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Alan, we'll go to you in just a second. A quick follow-up to something you said, Jennifer, about SATs and SAT optional. Since this is a new adventure for a number of students and families, at what point would you still recommend a student submit SAT or ACT? When would it be a benefit and when would it be a detriment when it's an optional year?
Yes, well, I would say it's a benefit. I mean, just to be blunt, it's a benefit if it falls within our range, right? If you look at our class profile, every college has, there's something called the common data set, and every college and university shares this information out. This is raw data. It's, you know, it'll say how many students applied. It'll say what the range of scores are. Many times we want to dig deeper than that. So I always tell students, don't just eliminate yourself just because you're like, oh, I'm below the score there. There can be a lot more than what you're looking at there. But I would say if you look at it, you say, yeah, my scores are within that range, or they're higher than this school, then that's a showcase moment, right? Send them in. That's great. Where I would say you do not want to send them in, it's not always necessarily if it's below that, especially when you know your academic record really shines. But really it's a student looking back, and a student knows if they were disappointed, or if they look at that score and they say, this is not my best, this is not what I would want somebody making a decision on, this is not the best reflection of my ability, right? At that point, I would say that is a good decision not to submit the score.
Thanks, Jennifer. We're going to go to Alan Delsman in New York.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks a lot for your presentation. I have a couple questions concerning international students. And the first is, how are you going to handle the incoming international students who may well not be here? But secondly, on the future applicants, international students may well not apply as in greatest number because the inability to get work visas after graduation. So about that, I wonder how you are going to anticipate the loss of diversity in the student body with the decline in international student applicants.
Well, I'll start with the incoming students. So Connor Fritz, who oversees our international and recruitment and admission efforts, has been in incredibly close contact with all 55 of our incoming international students. So we know pretty much where they're at. We know some of them actually had student visas already because they were about a dozen. They were already in the United States. So we have been tracking them very closely. And they are also working with our international place and getting their visa. Now, there are some that may not be able to get here, and there's going to be a variety of reasons for that. But at this point right now, there's nobody. There have been 2 of the international students that have affirmatively said that they are taking a gap year. One was before the pandemic. The second one was, I believe, probably mostly because of the pandemic and just a lot of uncertainty with their family, and she decided to stay home for a year. So I think that they are, for right now, the international students are all in. We have about 40 students who have told us that they may do a gap year. So these are ones who are telling us, saying, you know what, I might, depending on what happens here or there. Only a dozen of those are international students. So they really want to be here. They're hungry to be here. If they're not able to get here for whatever reason, they can't get the flight through, there's an outbreak in their country, they don't feel safe sending their child here to this part of the country, we will continue to work with them. And, we've explored, and this is not at all a guarantee, but we've explored letting them come in the spring for international students, if that's something that could take some pressure off. No decision can be made about that yet, because we really don't even know if we're going to face a situation like that. But we are very responsive to them. So with the international students, I at least for this fall, am I going to say there's going to be no students impacted? No, I think there will be some, but I actually don't anticipate it'll be as many as we might have predicted if we were having this conversation in April. So those are the international. In terms of recruitment, so we continue to have we are doing a lot of the work that we would have done remotely we would have done in person, traveling, being there remotely. And the demand has continued to be very high. Now, international students applying to the US, there were some drop-offs, particularly from some countries. And we've been seeing that, not just CMC, but a lot of institutions the last 2 or 3 years. So there has been some shakeup there, I think, just on a variety of different things that have maybe made international students a bit more reticent to pursue the US. So other countries having stronger or really strengthening their education system. So we anticipate there'll be some challenges. And really for us, again, we're in a unique position because we're smaller and we're able to have so many individual conversations with students and families. So as we move through that process, as issues start to arise, we can figure out what is the situation with visas, right? What is happening to international students here? And how do we communicate that to international students? And if we're actually not in a position to be able to fully support them down that pipeline, then let's take a step back and really think about what this is going to mean. We do not want to lose our international student body at all. So we are committed right now to doing everything we can to seeing them through the pipeline. So, yes.
Thanks, Jennifer. A quick add to that, you mentioned a few minutes ago that some people may want to stay close to home. Do you kind of expect a large increase in California or Southern California applicants?
Applicants?
Yes.
I guess I do anticipate that there will be an increase in the Southwest, and which is actually a really good thing. We have seen somewhat of a stagnated pool in California, not necessarily the Pacific Northwest, but California specifically, and Southern California even more so. So we would be excited to see an upswing there. The behavior of our admitted, and that's really all I have to rely on right now, right, is the behavior of the students who committed to CMC. We had a bit more from the state of California commit than we have in previous years, but it wasn't, so far it's nothing that's outside of what would be a regular profile at CMC. So I think it's possible, but right now we're not necessarily seeing that in terms of who's interviewing, who's attending information sessions, things like that.
Thank you. All right, Art Dodd, go ahead, Art.
Thank you. So I'd like to follow up on the academic plan and the jostling for position. As you see, Southern California, Los Angeles County for Claremont, the willingness to want to announce such, and given where you may be located, if the benefits and drawbacks of, wanting to have that out there for both you and the school, and then possible students knowing what they can expect.
So you're talking about the phase that LA County is in? Or?
Well, just an academic plan announcing online versus in-person sports as opposed to on hold, given we're in LA County and in Southern California, just, that we want to be able to announce something, but we're holding off because, as opposed to, would there be benefits to being the first to announce?
Oh, I see. You mean in Southern California or just in Claremont? Maybe both.
Well, specifically CMC, given where where we're located.
I mean, just for everybody on this Zoom meeting, we all want some certainty, right? So I think anytime somebody can tell people, no matter what it is, this is what we're doing, there's some, even if disappointment is latched with that, there's some comfort in, at least I have this information and now I can perceive what to do with it. For us right now, there's things are, in terms of the planning on behalf of the college, it's extraordinary efforts, and we're close per what we've said, early July. That is definitely when we will announce. I don't think USC's already announced. There's been the California State University system has announced they'll be online. So I don't think we'll probably fall somewhere in the middle. And the challenge, of course, with LA County is that it's all contingent on us being in phase 3, moving into phase 3, which we're not in right now. So there's some built up anxiety about that. But yes, I think I don't know how well or how much the Claremont colleges will be able to orchestrate that announcement. Well, that's to be determined, but I know CMC will be ready with our decision in early July.
Jennifer, we have a few questions that came in through the chat. One is from Lisa McCaffrey talking about alumni interviewing. So for those of you who are alumni interviewers, thank you for your service. About 150 alumni interview in a given year, and it's a good way to give back should you be interested. But she's asking, do you think alumni interviewing will actually happen? Would it be in person? Would it be via Zoom? Do you want to interview more applicants because of this unusual year?
Yes, alumni interviewers will happen. I met with Wicker about this, and right now with the plan, it will not happen in person. We've just decided that we're going to do everything in a Zoom format just for consistency's sake for this cycle. And we decided that we will keep it consistent to the general region. So this way, for those of you who have been alumni interviewers, it can get overwhelming, or you can get not many requests depending on where you're at. So we're going to keep it consistent with, okay, these are your alumni interviewers. If you're from this part, connect with them. And then we'll use the alumni interviewers that are underutilized for students who are looking to interview that may be in a part of the country or world where there is not an alumni interviewer. Will there be more? You all are volunteers, so our expectation is not necessarily that there will be more. We wouldn't put that on you, but I think if for an alumni interviewer, it's easier to do more via Zoom, then that'll be great. Edna's putting together the manual, and we are planning on actually doing some online training for alumni interviewers too. So that'll be new. I know we for those of you who've gotten to come to Impact on campus, we'll be doing what we normally would have done on campus and online.
Thanks, Jennifer. We're going to go to Leslie Bentley. Leslie, if you'd like to ask your question. You just have to unmute.
Hi, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and I have a question that's not really specifically related to COVID. I have a son, my third son graduated from Claremont McKenna in 2015, and my fourth son will be applying to many places, I expect, for the class of 2025. And I'm curious to know, just in the last number of years, how you feel the culture on campus may have changed, given that it feels like we may not be coming back to the same college, which was, I mean, my son had a good experience at Claremont, but it wasn't a fabulous fit. So I'm just really curious to get a sense from the admissions department on how the culture on campus has changed over the last, say, 6 or 8 years.
Oh, it's pretty drastic. I mean, I think, well, maybe I shouldn't say drastic. Probably what I mean by that is, it is, you know, when I reflect back, and some of it is physical, even if you just stop and think about the physical changes that have happened to the campus. The building where I'm in right now, Kravis, wasn't here. I mean, we moved in 2011, right? The Cube, the Athenaeum, all these renovations, and Robert Civilian. So the physical aspects of the campus have certainly changed. And it's actually not just physical, right? The way that the campus looks and feels now is much more conducive, I would say, to community conversation, stop and go, than it might have felt when I first arrived here in 2005. I mean, it you know, it's a nice campus, well manicured, but I would say that the urban planning design wasn't as intentional as we have now. So that is a part of it. The other aspect is, I mean, if you know, take a step back, we have revamped the whole dean of students. I mean, I think in terms of academic affairs, there's a new dean of faculty, not new anymore, but certainly from, you know, that period. And I think with a lot of the leadership positions actually have kind of shifted over, and not that the predecessors didn't in their own right do great work, but really I think everybody here, every department here takes a lot of pride, a lot of effort in really not just thinking through our departments, but one of the things that I've experienced while I've been here is really trying to work much more together. So we're the entry point, but we have to understand what the student experience is from when they first step foot on this campus to when they go to orientation, to when they go to their first meeting with the Sol Center, to when they have that first, you know, awkward moment, wherever that is. So kind of understanding like the feel of the campus, the opportunities that they have, and kind of filling that out. I think in terms of, so we have Dean of Students, there's the Care Center, which has been in place now too, which has served as a phenomenal resource for all, and not just for students, I think for every member here. There's, I think, just a lot more thoughtfulness in the curriculum and faculty hires, and being very thoughtful about thinking about, you know, just diversity within that area as well. For students, you know, associated students for Claremont McKenna College used to be really the primary student leadership. And while that will always be an active student government, we now have the College Programming Board, which is incredibly active and immersive and inclusive and comprehensive and open to really serving a very wide bracket of students' interests, whether that be, look, I just like going with 3 students to go to see a play, and plays are my thing, versus, no, I want to plan big events are my thing. Or I want to plan a trip to Washington, D.C. and take my peers with me. So I would say that while students have always been, for my orientation here, the whole CMC experience has been about students first, right? But I think that the taking the step back and understanding it's students first, but the administrators, the faculty, everybody here has to make sure we're putting the proper scaffolding in place for them to jump in and be able to be the author of their own life, and know when, you know, and they got the Claremont colleges too, which is great because they can spread their wings and tap into different areas there. But yeah, it does not, I mean, even I would say that the classes I've seen come through, their interests, their passions, their real commitment to, I think community was always important here, but I think the broadening of that definition has been something that, while not perfect, there's always room to grow, has been something that is definitely improved since I've been here.
Jennifer, a few people have asked about how we're going to be evaluating applicants, especially when it comes to extracurriculars with COVID-19 in mind. So what are your thoughts on how we would change how we evaluate applicants this year in relation to all those leadership activities we're so accustomed to seeing?
Yes. So I think that, again, the key thing will be the onus is always on the young person to share with us why they want to be here, right? And what they've done to get themselves to the point here where they're saying, I'm sharing this with you, admission office, you figure out whether or not, you know, you're going to admit me, and then I'll get to make the decision. And I think, you know, there's for us, and in some ways a refreshing aspect, at least from my perspective, is, or at least I hope for high school juniors, with all the stress they've had going on, and all of the challenges they face and will face. The one thing is we cannot expect the same thing of you as we've expected of students in the past under any circumstances. And, you know, we had a student call us about scores. They wanted to know if they should go take the ACT again, because the ACT is allowing them to take sections, just sit for, like, let's say you just want to take the science section again. And I said, I'm sorry, don't do it. I said, the whole purpose of this is for you to be able to focus on something other than this. And whatever that is for you, just go do it. And even if it's getting some more rest, getting a decent night's sleep, reading books you've always wanted to do, but you never had the time for, this is your time to do it. And to do it without feeling like this is gonna, you know, gonna take away from doing that thing that you really, you know, wanted to make sure you did because it would look good on college applications. I think for the biggest hope is that we'll get more of that authenticity. And I think our applicants tend to show that, you know, it's not that it's been absent, but we get it. A lot of the things that they were working toward have been disruptive, are non-existent, are not going to exist in the same form. Things that they wanted to do senior year aren't going to be there. They were going to be on honor council. Maybe that won't be in the same capacity. So we are just understand that we are going to get that. We're living this with you. We understand the disruption. You know, if there's something you want to flesh out, that's great. What we really want to know more about, like I always tell students, is why might you be a better community member now because of this experience? And, you know, if it is that the student took a month to rest and figure out what it is that they wanted in life and in a variety of different ways, that is a positive, you know, as opposed to being on a hamster wheel of feeling they have to move. And so our hope is that they have that. I mean, we'll still have grades. We'll have grades up to that point. If anything that they feel they need to explain, you know, they can get recommendation letters from teachers. So when they look at their record, if they say, there's this that I need more explanation for, don't be afraid to give us the explanation. Get a teacher or somebody who's worked with you that can help support what that transition may have been like. You know, anything that you feel can showcase. We don't need 20 of your papers from high school necessarily, but if, let's say, your school went to pass, no pass, and you did an extraordinary research paper and presentation, and you feel that that is something that you think was your best work, that might be a good idea to submit that, right? So when you look and say, okay, they're not going to have this, but in actuality, I still have the product that would have given me that A. And so that's how I'm going to go about building that up. So, and again, I'm happy to have conversations with folks individually if there's like, you're trying to figure that out, but just what is going to put you in the best position. If there are any gaps, how can I go about making might be ways I can go about making that up? And just, you know, again, we acknowledge this has just been very stressful for students, and they were not in optimum learning environments. So we're not going to expect them to just have just keep going. Some of them might have been able to, but that would not be what I would expect.
Jennifer, we're going to go to Mark Schwartz. Mark, if you want to ask your question. Unmute yourself too.
Thank you. I'm curious to know if CMC will continue to release its acceptance rate statistics. And just so we're clear, it's the number of students accepted divided by the number of students that apply. I think there was some concern that CMC would stop releasing those numbers. And if you are, can you tell us what it is for the incoming class? Thank you.
Yes, no, we would, so that, I guess there's different stages that percentage exists, right? So there is when a college first releases their admission offers, and that can actually change based off waitlist activity. So the final number for some schools, for CMC, we've usually traditionally been done like by around right now, even before that. But for some schools, that can go on until, you know, August. So the final number will always be, as I referenced earlier, the common data set. And then we also put out a profile for the class. So what we have done is, right now we have we froze the data on May 15th of what the incoming class is. That has already changed since May 15th, okay? But we like having that data because we get questions like this, and some people are asking and they want to know about the class, they're excited about the class. So we are putting together a profile that will be at some point on the website. We're going to freeze it again on July 15th because we anticipate the data is going to be different. Okay, maybe not drastically, but it might be different. So, and then it won't be final until census date, which is early October, or maybe late September this year. So that's when that number becomes final and official and what's reported out to all those fun places like US News World Report. So I can share informally, and again, this has been approved by institutional research. I don't think we're going to be extending. I don't know about wait lists from this point forward, but you know that could go. Right now, it's a 12% admit rate.
Thanks, Jennifer. We have Chris Mann. Chris, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi there. Question on, Jennifer addressed this in the beginning, that, you know, some students did college visits and most schools have put up something virtual with a junior and doing some of those virtual tours with them. Some schools are much better at it than others. Some are remarkable at it and they make their campuses look spectacular. And if you've been there, I'm impressed with their videos. They're fake news in a way. But my question is, what if you don't have an opportunity to visit and you're looking at videos and you're truly trying to get a sense of, or a student is trying to get a sense of the school, what should they be looking at in the videos, on campus, other places on a website to get a better sense of the school if they don't get an opportunity to visit?
Yeah, well, I think there's two ways to approach that, right? One would be talk to as many students as possible. So current students, and really get a sense of, and it's great if they know people from their school or their neighborhood, because they know there's that familiarity point of, oh, you came from, you know, Cincinnati, or you came from here. What was that like? I mean, to go across the country versus what was it like to go to school 10 miles away, right? I mean, so sometimes it's helpful to have those vantage points and really getting a good sense of why students picked CMC over UCLA or over, you know, Notre Dame or whatever the case may be. Because I think it helps them understand, well, that might have been important for that student, but it actually has no bearing on me. So I need to keep kind of going through and talking. So I would say, and that really is true, right? Even the campus visit, the core thing is to introduce them to, and for them to be able to interface with as many people as possible. In terms of the, you know, I understand definitely, because there's going to be a range of quality of videos to no video potentially, depending on campuses and their quality of photography. How a campus looks and feels is important. What I always tell students though is that think about it, understand the geography of it. So is it an urban metropolitan campus? Is it a suburban campus, or is it a rural campus? And it's going to fall in one of those three areas for sure. So think about it from that vantage point of what's the closest airport to this particular place? How long will I be driving to get to this place? And again, for different students, this will mean different things to them. But I think you cannot just see a college or university as its own entity without understanding what surrounds it. So I think that is a big thing, is helping them understand, look, and also looking at how big is it actually literally, you know, how much square, it may look really big, it may look too small, but maybe when you start comparing the numbers, there's not as much of a difference. And getting a sense of what the residential life is like. So do all the students live on campus, or most of them live on campus all 4 years, like what happens at the Claremont colleges? Do only the freshmen live in campus, and then they have to find their own campus, they have to find their own housing off campus, right? All these kinds of things I think will help them. And again, especially at this stage for juniors, really start to think about those things. Okay, so, you know, I actually don't know if I want to be in a big city for all these different reasons. The other thing is going to be how they learn. So some of them may not fully know this yet, but if they have ever been privileged enough to be in a discussion-based classroom where there are 7 to 12 students, maybe even 15, it is going to be really hard to step into the larger lecture, unless they hated the smaller discussion-based and they were dying to get out of it. Then the lecture might be better for them. It is really hard to step back into that. Now, to be in a big classroom environment and then go into a smaller, it might feel intimidating, but most of them really excel at it in that environment. So I tell students, you're a social learner, you're a passive learner. Most of us are a combination. The social learner is the one that, I want to be there, I want to be part of the conversation, I am so excited. I want to make sure my teacher knows my name. You know, they will learn as they are going through the process, and lecture is not going to be so effective for them. Some passive learners, don't intrude me during my learning process. I'm reading my book. I will figure it out, and then I will come and ask questions, but I actually don't want you in my face while I'm learning. Those students really excel from the lecture, or sometimes even online format, right? They're getting the tools, they're figuring it out, they're asking questions when they have them. Many of us are a combination, but don't let them sell that part short, because that's going to be the most important thing, right? The classroom, the learning experience, access to faculty, large research university. Remember, you might be competing with graduate students for a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, but it's just something to keep in mind versus liberal arts that are more focused on, well, in most cases, exclusively undergraduate. So kind of really thinking through all these different steps and how important is it that you live on campus, that you be part of a community that is entirely residential for all 4 years versus, you know what, I'm okay getting off campus and having my own place. So kind of really, as important as looking at it is breaking down why those things are important.
Thanks, Jennifer. Our hour has just flown by. Jennifer has agreed to do about 10 more minutes of questions. But if you need to sign off now, please go ahead and go. Don't feel obligated to continue. I have about a dozen more questions to get through. I won't get through all of them, so my apologies, but I'll try and summarize as many as I can. So Jennifer, and I'll start with a compliment too. Ann Sinek said your student videos were superb, and she'd love to know what you're thinking about ACA 5. Which I don't know what that is.
But yes, I'm sorry. What is, I did see that in the chat. What is ACA 5?
Ann, do you want to? You're muted, Ann. Go ahead.
The question is really about race and admissions. So ACA 5 is the repeal of a law that basically will allow affirmative action in admissions, and in particular, California legislature is going to make this decision. The UC regents have just decided that they will use race in admissions, and they have stated that today. So the question is, are we diverse enough? And do we have any thoughts about changing our makeup in the coming years?
Yeah, are we diverse enough? No.
That's a loaded question, sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, no, it's okay. I think, you know, when you take a step back, we have students with a wide range of interests. And again, how you break down diversity, if it's academic, intellectual pluralism, geography, citizenship, ethnicity. I mean, there are certainly students here for such a small student body that are coming from such a wide range of places. And the great thing we have is because we're such a small community, they're able to have a lot of those valuable conversations that even if you can be in an incredibly diverse place, you may never actually have if the students just kind of, you know, stick together with people they have. So I think we definitely have that advantage, you know, but I would say, you know, there's, when you take a step back and you actually think about the admission process, it is it is navigated in many ways for a student who has a more affluent, whether that be the high school they attend and the resources that they have, or parents, or, you know, it even just talking about college in January, right? That's not going to be every single student. Some students won't start talking about until October of their senior year. So I do think that there's a lot of things to take a step back and say, we know we have a lot more work to do. We're not content with, I think, the reach of our pool. And we're working, you know, a lot of that is with the community, because we want to make sure we're always honest with students and families about where we're at and where they're coming, so they can make the best decision based off where they're at and who they hope to become. But yeah, no, I think that the UCs have always been, they've been since the proposition was passed, in a difficult position, and they were forbade from considering race, right? So that was something that for public schools was indeed challenging, and something that is, I think, from, you know, a lot of perspectives, will take some of the pressure off of them and their processes and how they're audited and all of that. But for us, it's been a longstanding, something that we're constantly working on. And yeah, it'll be, we have alumni and, you know, especially in current times, reaching out saying, yeah, and they're appropriately critical. And the great thing is that when I reach back out to them, they're open about ways that we can do better. And so it's, you know, just as long as we can keep the dialogue going, because if if they're seeing something I'm not, then let's figure that out. And we know that we need help, so.
Thanks, Jennifer. John McDowell has always asked some of the hard questions. He mentions a Wall Street Journal piece on May 30th about how COVID may change admission practices for selected colleges. And he asks, where is CMC in this? Are we trying to revert to normal as soon as possible, or are we leaning towards deep change?
Yeah, so this article.
Yes, no,
This article, yeah.
I definitely know. You know, I don't see how we're going to emerge from this and business go back to usual, if you will. Like just using the scores, for example, right? Who knows when CMC might have made that decision? I think it would have happened at some point. This forced us to make the decision, and we felt really good about it up to this point. And I think we'll continue to feel, because we're doing some early reads for our coaches and athletics. So we are seeing students coming through and we're evaluating them, and we're feeling really good about it. So I don't know if we'll ever go back to wanting scores, you know, and that's going to be a really big shift and change for CMC and for lots of institutions. I also think that as we go through and read, you know, at the end of the day, what we've always wanted is the authentic applicant, right? I've always told them, in a perfect world, you're sitting there right there with us and you're walking us through your file, every aspect of it, because then there's less opportunity for us misunderstanding, right? You can sit there and say, oh, no, Miss Annabelle Dance, that's actually not what happened. I did this. And you know, when you get to meet them, you get so much more information and you really get a better understanding of where they're at. We want to get as close to that as possible. And maybe with these circumstances, we may be able to look at things in a different way, and students might be able to look at things in a different way. I don't know, other than the scores, exactly how that's going to shift. We've never factored in demonstrated interest, so that's not something that we've ever been a part of our process. But yeah, I'm actually kind of excited. I'm hopeful that these juniors really feel that the pressure's off, be themselves, be honest with the process, and hopefully they're able to have, you know, really productive college searches.
Jennifer, any changes to transfer admission, or can you give any numbers on transfer admission
for this coming year? Yeah, no, not really. So in the past, in the last couple of years, and it does shift sometimes drastically, but we've usually enrolled about a dozen to sometimes up to like 20. This year, we offered admission to 21, and so far we have, I believe it's 9. And we have a couple who have extensions too, because they want to know what the plan's going to be. So far transfers continue to be, we received a lower number of applicants for transfers, but it wasn't significant enough to really know. And I'm just guessing for some students with all the shifts and changes, if they were thinking about transferring, maybe they just said, you know what, we're gonna stay put.
And any changes to athletic recruitment, or do you see coaches performing their processes differently?
Well, they are, right? They're not going to have camps. Some of them had an opportunity to meet these students. They've known them. Coaches actually helped us a lot in framing important questions, because they were working with the juniors, you know, throughout all this process, and they were saying, what are they going to do about this? They're not going to be able to do this. How are you going to take this? What are you going to do about APs? And so they were helping us really get those questions front and center. But I would say from right now, the coach's goal is to get to know the student as best as possible, understand their talent and ability to contribute to the team, help them understand CMC. By all accounts, that where they're at is similar to where from my perspective. They may respond differently, but based off our interactions with them and the students that they've been sending to us for early reads, their behavior is very similar to previous years.
All right, this is the last question. It's a fun one, but it might be the hardest one, Jennifer. After all these years, do you have a favorite essay? And if so, can you elaborate a tiny bit?
Yeah, my favorite essay was, it was a long time ago. We were in the 890 house, so that tells you how long ago it was. It was a student who talked about she had a very close relationship with her mother, and she was reflecting on the fact that she was going to be leaving home. She knew it. That was a goal for her, to go far from home. And she'd never been far from home. She'd never done camps, anything like that. And how she talked about how she went up to her the attic, and how she went through and in this experience, and believe it or not, she put this in a very kind of tight essay format, how going through every aspect of her childhood, things that they kept, how they kept them, going through seeing her mom's wedding dress, all these different things really made her realize how special her mom's relationship was, and really the reason that she was going to college and had such big wings and was willing to spread them was because of everything her mother had not been able to experience and had imparted to her. Still remember it like it was yesterday. So that was my favorite one, because it really, I mean, I was crying as you're reading it because she did such a good job of capturing, I think, something that was very unique to her. And it came across beautifully.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I apologize if I didn't get to all the questions, but I know Jennifer would be happy to answer anything into the near future. Of course, feel free to reach out to me if you'd like to connect with Jennifer. I mentioned on Thursday we're speaking with the Chief of Staff to the Mayor of San Francisco, as well as the Director of Emergency Services to the County of Orange, 2 alumni. Hope you can join us. Otherwise, thank you all very much. I'm going to unmute everybody so you can say hello and you can say thank you. So I'm going to unmute everyone now, and we hope to see you soon. Stay safe, be well. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jen.